one of the most important convention centers that South Korea has. And here we have, two of the most important gaming conventions as well, which was Big Festival and G-Star. This time I will talk about Big Festival. I covered a lot of indie games all over the 2 days I went, and also afterwards. But first of all, I need to catch up on a lot of things in the life while living here. It's been nice, like even if I will have to change a lot, like the lifestyle and all of the things. And Korea really has something to offer. Everybody knew basically that Korea is so much more into esports and online gaming, you know. They're like slowly driving towards like single player experiences, which are particularly more interesting the most. And there's a lot of opportunities to grow. It was very overwhelming in a good way because they offer about plus 200 like video games to play. When it comes to language barrier, I'd say about 35% of games did not have English subtitles, but that was because most of these are in the beta phase and they knew they were testing their games with mostly Korean gamers. Also, I'm not sure if you guys know, but they have their own digital stores where you can download many of these demos even to this day. I mean, yes, most of them also use Steam, but they also have Stove, where you can find a lot of great titles that are not even on Steam yet, so you gotta check that out if you're interested. That said, I'm pretty sure most studios are already thinking on including English subs and even other languages, but generally the most common languages you saw over there in this order were Korean, English, Japanese, and Chinese, both simplified and traditional. Luckily, I managed to try some games that were not heavily focused on narrative. Plus, my Korean skills were and are not still at the level of understanding everything at first. At the end of the video, I will leave you a list of some games I wish I would have tried and I couldn't due to the heavy narrative in Korean or because I didn't got the time to play them. Big Festival also invites other gaming studios around the world. There were a lot from China, Taiwan, Japan, Indonesia, Australia, US, and so on. There was also a dedicated section of games that debuted in the past on Big Festival and eventually were critically acclaimed as bestsellers like the ones you're watching right now. Speaking of Coffee Talk, it was very pleasant to see the devs still working with their small and beautiful franchise. Anyways, back to BexCon. A lot of sponsors here as well. All of the games that I tried were in a solid shape. Some of them were like tryouts because they used to have like game jams for all ages, and the teachers were there next to you checking the progress and the gaming experience while traversing the levels, you know. Most of the focus is driven towards PC and mobile. There's also a generation like mine, like millennials that have grown up with their PlayStations and Switch. But it's more safe to say that Koreans really like their PCs and mobiles because it's more reliable. Well, the event overall was very accessible for the public. There were families, children of all ages. It was really cheap, to be honest. I think the entrance was about like between $6 to $7 per person per day. They have their own award ceremonies as well, and that's like a kick-up to most of these developers for other big companies. Alright, enough sunlight. Back to the studio. There was a surprisingly good focus on mental health in many of the games I've played at the Big Festival, which was very refreshing in my opinion, especially in Korea's society that emphasizes competitiveness, although I'd say it appeals globally as well. Even Costa Rica, my country of residence, is always on top of the countries that work the most hours, believe it or not. That said, this whole idea of developing a video game independently is a high and commendable task that obviously deserves to be praised. One of the titles was Lo-Fi Room, a very simple game about finding keynotes throughout your room to make lo-fi songs. I really like the idea of searching for inspiration in your surroundings to make music. Songs are made with simple presets, but I can honestly see this helping other players to reach creativity or maybe have a narrative experience similar to Unpacking. Mono Wave is a similar puzzle adventure game following the journey of Mono, a newborn entity that splits into many different emotions after a strange blight. After that, your task is all about reuniting the emotions once and for all. Yes, it almost sounds like a cool Game Boy Advance game based on Inside Out. Remember those? In order to advance levels, you have to trigger the different emotions of Mono. The gameplay so far looks simplistic, but again, it could become engaging as long as they keep putting puzzles and hiding the abilities in interesting ways. And I really like the neon crayon art direction as well. Flower in Us was a narrative adventure about a kidnapper who lost his memory and teams up with the hostage to get out. I honestly don't like the amnesia cliché we also see in K-dramas. Aside from that, I really like the idea of telling a sad story with some interesting puzzles and a strong and yet subversive political background, having to deal with protests of the era and such. Goodbye Soul was a pleasant surprise. The gameplay and art direction reminded me a bit of Limbo and Inside with some post-apocalyptic vibes. Soul is turned into shreds due to an asteroid collision, and your journey starts in one of the many bridges across the Han River, where many people had decided to let go, and so is your protagonist until she encounters one militar that knows the whereabouts of an intended space evacuation. Whether you trust that or not is up to you, but the protagonist will eventually embark on a journey to find out. So similar to Limbo, you have to make different puzzles to manage your way out. Again, the 2D ambience and the use of narrative overall is superb so far, and I cannot wait to try it out. Bionic Bay follows a similar formula, and it kinda reminded me of Explosion Man. Do you remember that game? You are traversing an industrial complex with a device that lets you warp your body with almost any object. It may sound simplistic, but the game will slowly turn more and more complex as you advance. The demo was quite extensive and gave me a good impression overall. And you know what? I've noticed many people playing management sims during commuting, so I somehow can see the appeal of a game like Tiny Cafe, a very cozy title about managing your coffee shop with an army of the cutest mice you'll ever see in a shop. I would like to have more responsibilities while managing coffee art, but I'd rather play Coffee Talk instead. That said, I really like to see my coffee shop getting bigger and better over time. Then again, I would have preferred an automation puzzle game instead, but I sensed the enthusiasm of the devs when they received me with coffee beans in the booth, and man, I feel just like home. Speaking of wacky ass video games, I tried a collection of a bunch of crazy Japanese titles you would see on arcade back in the 90s. And the best one was Kick 'Em Loud, which is a game about running as fast as you can, throwing sandals, and screaming as loud as you can. Again, with the proper publisher and budget, I can easily see this project becoming popular in bars and restaurants with people that might want to relieve some stress after work, you know? I can see it even in karaokes or norebans that are popular in both Korea and Japan. Most people nowadays don't go to arcades anymore, not even Japan, except maybe Korea. Many people still go and have fun for a bit. Honestly, they have become a novelty these days since you can play anything at home, except probably this game for obvious reasons. So I'm thinking that maybe merging it into popular arcades, bars, and restaurants is the way to go. Talking with the developer and PR, I find out that the studio Tamakotronica is just one of the many projects shown at Make Control Japan Expo, where many other wacky-ass games with crazy hardware ideas are being tested with the public. And the expo is being on the run for over 4 years in a row. Like I said, it's time for a huge sponsor to greenlight these titles. Neuro Nightmare is a horror game experiment that tracks your brain to trigger different emotions that help you use a flashlight or stay invisible from monsters. The idea sounds frightening, and not because of the monster, but because there are devices that can actually monitor your brain activity. And this is not the first time I heard about this. Gabe Newell itself mentioned the possibility of allowing this on Steam. One of the coolest moments I have during the big festival is realizing with some depth how common were traditional kids games to other parts of the world. Signa Nota combines the mechanics of a traditional Marble Blast match in combat, meaning that you have to kinda slingshot the character in Beyblade style of arena and try to hit as many targets as you can. You can also make combinations if you hit the button right in the moment of impact and therefore get better combos. It was pretty fun overall, and the 2D sprite art direction reminded me of classic RPGs. I'm always driven towards difficult games and surrealism. Always! And the fact that nobody started speaks volumes when it comes to surrealist escapism. The game is all about talking to different entities that are reminiscent of famous art styles. Let's say you talk to Mr. Dali or Mr. Monet while finding lost items that are part of masterpieces. It's a cool way to understand the seek and the art movement behind these characters and understanding the whereabouts as well. Again, I can see this as an interesting way of understanding art history in a museum for those few people like me that still goes, or as an accessible video game for that matter. And I'm glad to announce that I finally tried the Playdate. It is tight, it is cozy, the cranky does feel pretty charming and useful for the many different games you can play there. Plus, the monochromatic screen gives a lot of style to the console. Particularly a game called IFO, which is basically the first Korean video game in the console, and it's pretty much playing like Asteroids, except you use the crank to turn sights and the buttons to shoot or keep straight, which was pretty interesting. Sonokuni is a crazy one-kill action game based on Japanese mythos. As you can see, it really portrays a lot of the Hotline Miami style, except you're slicing your enemies with a sword. And we don't see many of these games nowadays, perhaps of the high level of difficulty required to beat it. And it's another game I want to devour as soon as it releases. Standalone is a fun action roguelike game about the fight between sheep and wolves. The good thing is you get different upgrades the longer you finish the many auto-generated zones. Firing is quite good, the animations look pristine, very similar to Dead Cells, although I would have loved to see more variety in enemy types. Shape of Dreams is a roguelike very similar to Hades, but with a gameplay similar to Diablo as well. You have your hunter gathering different abilities in the different biomes of the galaxy and defeating the many different enemies you'll face. This was one game that was ready to ship as soon as you played it, but I guess you still have to wait for a couple of months or play the demo if you want. Metal Suits is a platformer very inspired by Mega Man about a guy reborn as a cyborg on his quest for revenge. It's a linear story where you can suit the protagonist with many different weapon styles, very similar to Broforce. The gameplay is fun, but I felt the guns were not placed in special moments to actually appreciate the pacing and the power of each ability. Kill the Witch is another action hack-and-slash Korean game, and basically you'll use a bat to home run your enemies. It's another title that plays smoothly, but I would have liked to see more variations on the attacks and different strategies of defeating bosses, maybe a combo system of some sort. Deva is fully available and is already one of the best games of the year. You play as a young woman that takes charge of an orphan wolf cub in the search to cure a world in decay. The great thing is that you have to slowly build a relationship with the wolf while fighting the darkness. I've been following Nomad Studio ever since Gris, and I can tell the evolution from a simple puzzle platforming to an action platformer, with a deliberating art direction and visual narrative that is eye-catchy on it all. With My Past was for sure one of my favorite titles I played. It's about a person that struggles to pursue his dreams due to social pressure and stereotypes and the process of following his her dreams. So you will see him jump into surreal scenarios that you're not sure if they are memories or dreams, but they are slowly building into an important crescendo. It's all about wanting to live the rat race of the corporate ladder, chasing your dreams and let your loved ones aside. As a person that came all the way to Korea and had very similar experience, I can surely relate to that. I would have wished to have less gamified levels and focus more on the story, but I guess it works as a 2D adventure and they know how to make a good metaphor to every challenge the protagonist is facing. Kage: Shadow of the Ninja Reborn is a new take based on the forgotten NES classic that I got lucky to try in there. It is developed by ex-Natsume devs on the newly evolved Tango project that worked previously on Pocky and Rocky Reshrine. So far I could talk to the PR team and it was purely a brand new title, mostly remade from the ground up. Considering the obvious difference between the NES and the new visual style that is more akin to later Sega Saturn or PS1 games like Strider 2 or even Metal Slug. You can consider it an expansion of the Ninja Gaiden formula with interchangeable weapons and characters. Again, it felt like a newly fresh experience and I'm glad these developers are still kicking and refining their old creations to this day. The Crush House is still a game I haven't finished yet, but I'm glad to get to know the director and understand the vision behind it. Please, developers out there, take notes on this. You're basically a producer whose purpose is to try to make the hottest takes of a reality show. It is less focused on the mechanics itself, but more on the results of your action and how it will evolve over time. It also gave some vibes of the Truman Show as well with quirky Sims mechanics. I read some criticism due to the lack of God mode, but personally, I'm kind of tired of procedural mechanics. Sometimes I just want a story from beginning to end. Overall, I'll take it more as a fun social experiment, and I always praise a good story unfolding like the Crush House. Copycat was a very gut-wrenching adventure about an adopted cat whose sole objective is to accompany an old owner that lost his previous cat. Yep, and what if the cat ever returns home? You see, adopting is a very serious issue that not many people dare to discuss in the media. The demo already felt uncomfortable enough to raise those types of questions. Surely not a game for everyone, but for sure it will be a tale to learn a lot from. Ogu and the Secret Forest is part of this new wave of cute adventures based on the Legend of Zelda: Link's Awakening, dare I say. You are baby Ogu, and your goal is to have adventures, no evil destroying the world, no pressure behind it. Just your bugnet and the many worlds and friends you will know during your journey. You will solve puzzles and explore dungeons in a similar fashion while making new friends across the land. And I really like the effects Ogu will earn, like getting dirty or stunned, giving extra thoughts on the mechanics as well.
You are trapped in a maze with no light at all. You must find the door to escape from the maze.
Speaking of original games, I tried one called Flawless Darkness that has zero art direction. And that is because it is focused on using your hearing to get out of the many different dungeons you play. You use a radar to locate monsters, traps, and keys to open the only exit door. And I'd say the game really holds your hand when it comes to puzzle solving. I've seen people finishing Dark Souls blindfolded, and that is way too much, I know, but maybe a more fluid gameplay and immersion wouldn't hurt. Revelatio was a cool tactical RPG set in a dystopian Victorian era. The catch here is that you can convert your enemies to avoid conflict, similar to the monks from Age of Empires. I met the art director too, and she was very keen to explain the inspiration behind the style of it, and is truly a game I want to try it out more once I have the time. Now, of course, I couldn't cover every game, so I'm leaving a list of game trailers of games I want to try in the future, and in the description again I'm leaving the full list of the games shown in the big festival. All in all, Big Festival was a pretty fun event, and I can truly see the importance from the organization and the Korean government to promote even more creative artists and programmers to push their dream games. Aside from the online games and MMOs, right now there are plenty of games that have become huge sensations abroad, and all that Korea needs is to keep supporting them as much as they can, you know? Not everyone has the budget of gigantic MMOs and online games, of course. They're in a different league, and it doesn't need to be on that level all the time. But it is important to note there's still an audience that is hungry for more games like this. So far, I will try to cover as much as I can from Korea and Japan as long as I'm living here, and probably after this long video, I'll try to keep my formats simple. Give my opinion in regards to the video game industry, very short and simple, and some reviews here and there. As you can see from my previous videos, I'm a very ambitious producer. But if I want consistency in my channel for this time, I prefer to release simple videos weekly or bi-weekly, more consistent and more simple. Plus, we have another project in Leon Jetsa channel talking about Korea as well that I recommend you to check out as well. Thank you so much for sticking to the end. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and take care.